Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now you may remember this Pentium E5400. I hope you do anyway because it was only a couple of days ago I tested it. This was the result of an online scam. Now the seller listed this as a Ryzen 3, but pretty much knowing it wasn't, I bought one anyway after hearing someone else had been scammed, and then we put it to the test alongside my GTX 1060. You may also remember this. A couple of months ago I purchased this thinking it was an RX 460 from AMD, although it was listed at a very cheap price, and it ended up being an Nvidia NVS 315 graphics card, which we went ahead and tested as well, alongside my i5 4460. So since that video, a couple of days ago, a lot of you guys have been asking me if I could try and put together a PC based around scammed parts, and I thought that's probably going to be harder than I first anticipated, because trying to find people who are going to rip you off for RAM, hard drives and cases is going to be a bit difficult. But what I thought we'd do, as per popular request, would be to combine these two in a budget build, the Ryzen 3 and the RX 460 here, to see how well they perform together in a cheap budget setup, considering that I actually ended up getting both of these two for nothing. So let's get into it, put these in a build and benchmark a few CPU intensive tasks as well as a couple of games to see how well they perform. Right, so I thought this tissue box was a good place to start. The motherboard I have is the MS7525 that I ripped out my mum's PC a while ago, and it seems to serve me well whenever I need to put an old PC together. It supports up to 4 gigs of RAM, which we will be using in this instance to make the most out of this cheap build. So we'll just slot the 800MHz memory in there, and we'll now install our apparent Ryzen processor, which is of course the Pentium E5400. Simply lift the latch, make sure the arrow's facing the right way, drop it in and apply a little P of thermal paste on there. A P is always enough and you don't need to spread it around. We can then drop the Intel stock heatsink on top of that and just push each pin in until it clicks into place. Not forgetting to plug the CPU header fan in, of course. So do you guys remember a couple of months ago when I sold off that old spares or repair PC with a dying motherboard inside that I explicitly stated no returns on because it was sold as seen and described as very faulty? Well, guess what ended up getting returned to me after weeks of dispute? Yep, this. But I guess that's just the way it is sometimes, and I've chosen this to build our scammed PC parts build inside of. So it's time to put everything inside our case. We've already got the PSU inside of here, and we won't be including a DVD drive because I don't feel that they're that necessary anymore, or the backplate for the motherboard because, to be honest, I've lost that. So we'll simply slot the motherboard in, screw it into position, and then we can put our hard drive in as well. I'm using my 1TB Windows 10 drive here just to make things a little bit more simple when it comes to benchmarking. Now slot the power supply in and the 4-pin CPU power connector as well, followed by the USB front panel connector, the audio connector to give you that nice crisp sound, as well as the front panel connector, which luckily is attached to one cable in this instance. We can then plug the power connector into the hard drive, as well as the SATA cable that connects to the motherboard, as well as the hard drive on the other end. And let's finally slot the Nvidia NVS 315 or apparent RX 460 GPU into this build to complete it, screwing it into place there to hold it tight. And there we have it, one budget scam parts PC build. But does it turn on? Let's find out. So this motherboard doesn't officially support the E5400, which is why I was kind of surprised it works. However, it is showing up just fine along with our 4GB of DDR2 memory here as well. Getting into the benchmarks, and we didn't even bother with the single core test in Cinebench because it was slow enough in the multi-core test to score 105. Not the greatest result, I will admit. Moving on to Premiere Pro and rendering a 1080p 60fps clip as usual, it did it in 1 minute and 47 seconds, which really isn't that quick, but it did feel quite snappy to use. If we move on to some gameplay, Fallout 3 at 720p ran with 47 frames per second on average, dropping to 4 in some places. I have to state that we stayed mainly around Rivet City, so expect a drop in frames in other areas of the map, just like I did. Moving on to GTA 5, and this was really a no-go. at 800 by 600 resolution with just 20 frames per second on average, and a heck of a lot of stuttering to go along with that as well. GTA is of course CPU intensive, and you can see the E5400 really maxing out here, although the temperatures are staying quite good. So can it handle CSGO? Well, not really if I'm honest. Again, it's 720p to achieve 33 FPS on average, although just like GTA 5 there was quite a bit of stutter to go along with it, although it wasn't a completely unplayable gaming experience. Call of Duty World at War, a slightly older title, also ran okay at 36 frames per second on average at 1024 by 768, which was slightly better and slightly more enjoyable than all the games before it. Crysis actually felt quite smooth at 720p with 30 frames per second and didn't stutter all that much, although you can see the CPU and GPU pretty much maxing out at 100% throughout our gameplay shown on screen here. Temperatures are staying pretty cool though. Older games like GTA San Andreas run an absolute treat. Although we couldn't quite manage the very high settings, we did squeeze high out of it to achieve 45 frames per second average and 33 minimum. And furthermore, Half-Life 2 ran a treat too. It's actually the oldest game out of the bunch by a small margin, and this ran on the root canal level with 80 frames per second. Not a great gaming experience overall, but a suitable one when it comes to older games. So there we have it guys, I hope you've enjoyed this Scam Parts PC video. The PC itself isn't that capable when it comes to newer titles, however if it's older games you intend to play, then this might do just fine after all. So as always, thank you for watching, I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you did, leave a like on it, if you didn't, leave a dislike, subscribe if you haven't done so already, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.